Hello and welcome to another content journey webinar. We're going to start right at the top of the hour. Let's see, we only have a few minutes left. We want to be really prompt with our beginning time today. So we're going to wait just a few more minutes and let a few more people come in. Just so you know, we do have our chat up and running. So if you want, you can use that to say hi, ask questions publicly. You can also use the Q&A panel at the bottom of the Zoom window. I think everybody knows how this works at this point, but it's always good to go over that. We are recording the webinar today, and so everybody will get access to this afterwards. We post it to our blog, and we also post it to the YouTube channel. And for everyone who registered today, someone is going to be our lucky winner of a content audit that will be done by our team. And I'm sure after you see all of these steps, you're going to be very happy that somebody is going to have this done for them. So let's see. Oh, I'm getting information that chat's disabled. Let's see why. I'm seeing chat. Let me look at my settings really quickly. Okay. Let's see if that works now. I think I changed the settings. And thank you for letting me know. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Corey Miller. It's always good to have loved ones watching the webinar because they'll tell you the truth if you do a good job or not. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so we can go over a little bit about what we're going to learn today. And let's see, make sure that you can see my full screen. And Corey Miller and everyone else who's here, if you are not seeing that full big screen, please let me know. Let me get all of my things set up over here. We are recording the webinar. It is already going. Okay, so content audits, the content journey way. Let's get going. Gosh, sorry, everybody. So a little bit about me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Lindsay Miller, and I have been in WordPress and marketing for a little while now. And all of my experience led me to Open Content Journey in 2020. And we have quite a robust team at this point, and we serve a variety of clients across many industries. And we think our secret to success is really just staying true to who we are, focusing on our best skills. And honestly, we just try to do a really good job and be very thorough in our work and just continue to stay focused on that. So whenever we do a content audit, there really are 7 basic steps. And if you follow these 7 steps every single time, you can get through a very thorough audit. Now, it takes longer if you have more content than it does if you have a little bit of content. But truthfully, no matter how little or how much content you have, you should really be doing this once a year. When we talk about SEO and search volume and opportunities on the web, and this is one of the reasons I love organic search so much, is that the effort that it takes to build a piece of content one time can serve you for a really long time. And so if you write a blog post, in 2018 and it just sits there and it doesn't get an update, it doesn't get a refresh, it doesn't get looked at, then maybe it worked really well for you for 2 or 3 years, but eventually it's just going to quit performing. And you don't know that unless you take the time to do an audit. And furthermore, if you have a piece of content that you think should be performing better and it's not, updating it and being consistent with those updates can actually make it perform way better, way faster than if you were to just write a piece and let it sit there for a year or 2. So 7 steps every single time, and you can do this. Now, when our SEO specialist, Megan, showed this to me, So this all came from Megan. I did not learn this process on my own. I felt incredibly overwhelmed. So I just want you to know that you're not alone as we go through this together. This is an overwhelming process. It is a lot of information, but once you learn these steps, it's much easier to follow and it'll be okay. So here we go. Steps. First, you're going to set your goals. Next, you're going to narrow your focus. Choose the type of content that you want to audit. We're going to talk about the different types of content if you're not familiar. Then you get to play content librarian. You're going to go out and you're going to gather and organize and start categorizing all of the data that you're going to get together. Then you get to play detective and audit and analyze all the data that you've brought in. Then we're going to assess the findings and make a plan. Then the fun part happens, or maybe it's all fun depending on who you are, and you're going to start taking action, and then you're going to tweak your content strategy based on your findings. And if you don't have a strategy, then you probably aren't setting yourself up for success anyway. So, 62% of the most successful content marketers or marketing professionals out there are working with a strategy. So the content audit isn't your strategy, it's part of your overall strategy. So the final step is really going back and tweaking your overall strategy. So first, goal setting. You could have one of three goals. One could be improving your SEO to bring more traffic and leads in. So you may be looking at one of these bullets under here: meta title and descriptions, maybe keyword placements, internal and external links. Your goal might be improving engagement to ensure that your content's actually being read. So here we might be looking at traffic and social shares, bounce rates, conversions. Conversions are always important, right? Excuse me. And goal 3 could be improving your conversion rates and bringing more signups or opt-ins and ultimately sales, because I think that's probably what all of us are really wanting at the end of the day, even if we're doing it in more altruistic paths. And so that, again, maybe looking at conversion rates and calls to actions. How much time are people spending on our page, consuming our content? Are they finding it valuable? And sure, are all of these goals important? Absolutely. But I think having one of these goals in mind when you're looking at your audit is it helps you have a clearer understanding of where you're trying to go. And so I think this is a good place to start, is really setting your goal, deciding ahead of time which one of these you're going to focus on before you start gathering the data and analyzing. So these are 3 good places to start for your goal setting. Next, we're going to narrow your content focus. Are we going to be looking at blogs or service pages? Now, for most small and medium-sized businesses, you probably can look at both, right? Like, let's be realistic here. You're not going to have 11,000 pieces of content on your page. We did one of those recently. Emily and I were pulling content in, and we were like, does that really say 60,000 links? It did. So we had to really narrow down our focus on which one we were going to be looking at. And even on larger sites, it's not just blogs and service pages. It may be bringing in a company's wiki or their knowledge base or other content that they have on their site. And so really figure out if you need an area of focus for a smaller, medium-sized business. And if you're doing this for yourself and not offering it as part of your own service offerings, then you may be able to just pull it all into one. Content journey site, for example, even though we blog twice a week and have for several years now, we would be doing it all in one. We would have our blogs, our service pages, and all our content, and we wouldn't necessarily need to narrow our content focus, but it depends, again, on the size of your site and if you're needing to narrow that focus. Next, and this is the fun part because we're going to get to show and tell, we're going to gather, organize, and start categorizing all of our data. So this may be the part of the recording that you get later that you may want to come back to and pause and work with me. And so we're going to show and tell. We're going to do this together. And I'm going to try to go slow through this process. There's some things I cannot show you because there's just data behind the scenes for our clients. And so I'm just going to have to talk you through that part. But I'm going to try to show you as much as I can. So I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment. And then I'm going to start it back up again so that I can show you this other screen. Okay. Okay. And again, if you are not seeing the right things, or if I'm talking about something and you're not seeing it, please let me know. I'm going to pull my chat up over here so that I can make sure that I'm paying attention. Because I want to make sure that you are actually seeing what I'm talking about, because I think that's important. So here is, you can see I said here, this is our webinar version. So I have tried as best I can to anonymize this data, but this is an actual content audit that we have done for our client. And so we have this fantastic spreadsheet down here. And then what we do is we go out and start gathering all of this data, and we start putting everything in here, the sitemap, the Google Analytics, links, Google Search Console, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to walk through this together, and it starts putting everything into our master document. So first off, we start with our sitemap. And if you don't know how to find a sitemap, it's really easy to do. You can simply go over, we've used Digital Marketer as an example. I love Digital Marketer. And so I found somebody I could do this with. And so you go to a website, and so you go, we're going to use them again like this, Marketer. You can do this on your own site probably, /sitemap.xml. And then it pulls up this fantastic little piece right here. So this is all of the sitemaps that they have on their site. And sometimes you have to put in just /sitemap. There's several things that you can do. You can Google it. It'll show you all of the different ones, but this is the most popular, and it'll populate all of these up here. And so once you do that and you've already focused your content down, we can figure out which one you're looking for. So let's say that for them, they had decided that they wanted to look at all of their pages. So you'd pull up your page sitemap, and then you would just simply copy and paste all of your pages and then move them over into your sitemap and copy and paste them here. And so it's going to show you your URLs, it's going to show you your images, and then it's going to show you the details of when they were last modified. So that's the first step. Collect your XML sitemap. Get all of your URLs there that you have. Next, you go over to your Google Analytics, and you just export everything you have. Best practice for us is to look at an entire year's worth of data. Content for us, you don't, like if we publish something 3 months ago or 2 months ago, the performance of that really doesn't tell us a lot. We want to see what something does over 12 months or more. And so here is where you just pull everything into the spreadsheet. We like to make sure that we have our date range listed here so that we can always see that. And then we're pulling in our segment, the page views for all of those URLs, the time that's spent on the page. Because remember the goals, we mentioned all of these pieces that we wanted to evaluate, bounce rate, and the page values listed here, but that's not something that we're necessarily pulling in because we're just bringing in all of that data. And so now we put this into our spreadsheet. Next is we're bringing in every single one of our links on the site. So this is coming in from the blog, from the back end of the website itself. And so we're doing an export on the back end of the website. So from here, it's just bringing in all of those pages. It's a very simple export in most content management systems. And so that lets us bring that in, and we put this into our spreadsheet. And then next is our Google Search Console. So this is, if you aren't familiar with Google Search Console, it's a wealth of data and information. I still have to do this every single time I pull up Search Console. Is like, watch this, I'll show you. Google, oops. I was gonna say, show me login, search console, login. I don't know why I have to do this. Does everybody else have to do this? You can see it's purple because I have to do this every time. But sign into Google Search Console. This is one of the things I can't show you how to get because there's no way to anonymize the data for any of our clients. But you would sign into your Search Console account, put in your date range, and then go ahead and do just like an export into a CSV. And then you would pull that back over into your spreadsheet. And so your Google Search Console is going to show you really granular data of like clicks, impressions. This is where we get a great click-through rate and position. So for content journey, for example, we use SEMrush. Other people use Ahrefs and Screaming Frog and all of these other systems. But honestly, nothing is going to be as detailed and as accurate as your Search Console data. And so we're going to get some other information from SEMrush for our content audit, but this is probably the best one. So our click-through rate on our position is coming directly from this. And again, it's pulling the URLs very specific to what we're looking for as well. And so now we get to look at our SEMrush data. So this is showing us how, I don't know, not just the position of our of each of our URLs, but what are the added benefits that they're getting? So especially in search, and one of the things that we love to do at Content Journey is how do we get a piece of content not just to show up in, you know, the top 20 results or even the top 40 results when they can be helpful there, but how do we get them over here into these search features? And so featured snippet, the local pack, the image keywords, site links, knowledge panel, people also ask. All of these things are also incredibly important for a piece of content. So even if it's not performing in other places and we can get it to perform in these search features, we are going to consider it a really valuable piece of content. And so we want to make sure that when we're performing these audits, that we capture this information. For me, there isn't a better tool to get it from than SEMrush. They make it really easy. We've tested it with friends in different locations of the US and have found it to be fairly accurate. And so this is where we go. I used Coca-Cola as my example today. So if you're ever curious what Google's search results are for Coca-Cola, you can see. So they're just for interest, right? Their traffic cost and their branded keyword traffic. There you go. And look how much improved they have been since 2016 to 2022. But anyway, so if we look at their featured snippets and their images, we would simply just click on that. So this is their 236 keywords that show up in this was the featured snippets piece. And you would just not export to PDF, sorry. You would export it over here and get it into an Excel file. And then we dump that over here into our featured snippets. And then you just repeat that again for our local pack, for our site links, and then just keep continuing to go down. Knowledge panel, FAQs, image pack, and then images. And again, SEMrush shows all of this, and we would just continue to like pull it in. Like Coca-Cola does very well on images. So they have, 5,000 keywords that are pulling up in their image pack. And so that could be really valuable content to them, depending on, what pages and where they're showing up. And then reviews, which are obviously very, very important. And then their landing page goals. Now, this is something that people would have to have already set up in Google Analytics in order to have this information. So if you have a client or if you don't have goals set up in your site, then go ahead and skip this step. And truthfully, if you don't have goals set up, maybe you also might consider setting up goals, because that is another key area of helping you determine if your content's working or not, because it'll show up for you. And so this is just an export, just simple export of going into Google Analytics and exporting our landing page goals report. That's it. So it's going to show us the goal completions, how many sessions are there, the new sessions, the new users, the bounce rate on goal completions specifically, and conversions. Again, this is incredibly important information, because let's say that we've pulled the information in on click-through rate and impressions, and the link is showing that it's getting really low traffic, and yet their conversion rate is, 97%. So for example, I can see for this client, there's a piece down here that's showing, sessions of 458 sessions with, goal completions that are 126%. Like, that's a really valuable piece of content. If we were just looking at traffic alone, then we might be deleting that page. And then what would that do to revenue? What would that do to conversion numbers overall? And so that we want to make sure that we're capturing that data and not making or not taking an action that we're going to regret. And then ultimately, we may not even know why all of a sudden there's a drop or a decline in conversions. And because it was off of this, low trafficked piece of content that we didn't think was very valuable, that ended up being really valuable. So goals are really important in Google Analytics, and that's why we always pull them into our landing page report, into our content audit. All right. Next is our site crawl. So this is just a simple site crawl. You can see the tool that we use is Sitebulb. And again, this is just a full dump of the entire site, and it's giving us everything. It's showing us all the URLs. It's going to now, this is where we see our titles. Does it have an H1? What is the meta description? What's the meta description length? And we can now start seeing this. What's the parent URL, like internal linking, is it indexed? And all of this is really important information as well. And if you remember back to our goal setting slide, I said several titles of information that we're bringing in here that could be some of our primary goals of information that we need. Okay. And then finally, we're pulling in specific. So this was a blog post audit. And so for our blog post audit, we're pulling in a dump from the website of every single blog post that's ever been published on the site. So you can see for this audit, there's some in there. I'm seeing 2016, 17, 18. So there's a lot of dates. I think there's probably some that even go back further than that. Oh, no, there we go. 2016. So we're seeing publication date, we're seeing titles, we're seeing the URL again, because that's how we're matching it to our master list. And then we're going to look at categories and any titles, and ultimately the link that it's coming through and the traffic source. So I know that was a lot. This is one of the pieces that when Megan taught this to Emily and I, She was like, this is not, you can't do a content audit for anybody in a day. So like, this is a process that we take, a couple of weeks to do, because it does take time and it is monotonous. And so you just kind of go, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours on it today. And then I'll spend another 2 hours on it Thursday. And then I'm going to come back to it. And so, this was the piece where I was like, okay, this is the first overwhelming part. And I know, and we're only on, I think, step 3. But stick with me because it's so worth it. And once you get used to pulling this data, it does get easier once you know where to find it, and makes it really worthwhile. Okay. So, and I do have a blank spreadsheet that I will share with everyone as well, so that you can have a starting place for all of this. So now that we've pulled in all of our data into our spreadsheet, we have these fancy little formulas that gives us a suggested action. Okay, so this is just an automated action. This is not one that we've done anything else with, right? So this is pulling in, it's matching up our URLs, and this is probably changed since I changed things around and tried to anonymize some of my data. So now not all of my stuff is going to populate because our links aren't going to match up. But anyway, that's okay. Typically all of this is filled out because all of those links for all of these different spreadsheets are talking to each other and they're dumping into this. But here's what it's okay. So we have an automated suggested action based on a formula that we've said here, which is like, we want it to be a specific percentage of conversions or click-throughs. We want a certain piece to be performative. So our spreadsheet's going to tell us to leave a piece of content, to redirect it. It's going to tell us what to do. And so actually, let me pull up. I'll stop my share one more time. And see, I told you this was going to be show and tell time. Isn't it fun? I guess I'm like the geeky person that likes to go over all of the data. Okay, I'm just going to share. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this piece because now that we've pulled in all of our librarian gathering of data, now we get to play detective and do the auditing and analyzing. And our fancy spreadsheet does some of this for us, which is really nice. It makes this like just initial recommendation of what we need to do with it. But we're not going to just take a computer's word for it or this formula's word for it, as much as we love Excel and as much as we love formula. But we have to ask ourselves these questions. Which pieces are underperforming? And is the recommendation from the computer correct? Do we have content winners? Do we have some pieces that are just absolutely hitting it out of the park? And we need to be aware of them and make sure they continue to win. Do we have some thin content? Now, you may hear this as like inside baseball term, but thin content means that it's not very long. So it's really, really short. So when you hear people say that they're like, oh yeah, we'll write blog posts for you and it'll be 500 words. Like that's not a very valuable piece of content to Google. It may be incredibly well written. And truthfully, it may be a piece of content that a human gives them everything that they want. But at least as it stands now, when we talk about search engines and when we talk about Google in general, one of the ways of telling them that we know what we're talking about is that we use words and length and not filler words, but we have substance there. And so if we have 300 words, 400 words, 500 words, or even 700 in some cases, it's going to be too short and a search engine's not going to find value in that and deliver it to their searcher. Fourth is finding outdated content. So all of these most impressive marketing websites in 2020, that's outdated. And so people don't want to read that. The search engine knows that it says 2020 or it says 2017. And so they're not going to deliver that. Another really good example of this is COVID content. And so if you have content on your site that is still talking about COVID or the new normal of working from home, that is now outdated content. It's no more new normal. It is just the normal. And so all of that content is needs to be either taken off of the site or just updated. And then finally, you may just have missing information. Is there, just something that is missing from the piece of content that, if added, so another 400 or 500 words, a few more paragraphs, would make it that much more valuable to your audience that it would be served up better. So we ask these questions as we look at these automated recommendations, or if you don't have the automated recommendations, you just go in here and you look at your content with these questions in mind and start making your own assessment. And you start go look at yours, go figure out what your keyword is if it's not in your table, and search that keyword. Look at the top 10 searcher or top 10 results in that search result and see how your content stacks up against them. Find out why you're not in the top 10 and then go change it. Make notes in your spreadsheet, and in your blank one that you have, there's a notes section. Here's our summary. You'll have a notes section over at the back end of saying, like, what are we going to do with this piece of content? And so you can start making those recommendations for yourself as you're playing detective and as you keep going through. So now we're just assessing and planning. We're asking questions, we're assessing, we're making plans, we're making recommendations, we're figuring out how we're needing to change everything that we're working on and how we can update all of our content. And truthfully, this is the part that, depending on how much content you have, where you just get down rabbit holes, and we probably have to be like Emily and set ourselves timers and make sure that we don't spend too much time on a single piece of content and just like move through it. It's also where Megan's recommendation came in of, you can't spend 8 hours at a time on a content audit because there is so much. I mean, even if we look at this sample client, I mean, this was 241 pages that we were looking at here. And so that's a lot to look at. I mean, if you think about every single time we are clicking that link, we're assessing, we're doing a Google search, we may even be going back and looking specifically in one of these other tools to do a deep dive for some reason. And that can really make a big difference in in how tired you are and how well your brain works. So as you're assessing and planning, you really need to make sure that you're like going through and giving yourself permission to step away and not getting too sucked down into this. So as we're going through these, we're asking those questions, we're assessing, we're planning, and we're making one of these action recommendations. We're either going to delete and redirect. Redirecting is very important whenever we're working within SEO. We never just want to delete a URL. We always want to redirect it to something else. And there's other pieces to that too. I could talk about that way longer. Do we want to leave it as it is? So does something just maybe need a little bit more time to be assessed, or is it one of our winners and we just want to leave it alone and watch it and make sure it continues to win? Do we want to just redirect it entirely to something else because we're going to merge it with another or update it? So for example, you see, oh, here's a good example. Recently, Emily and I noticed on a content audit that we did where they had like, I can't remember the topic, but it was like a part 1 and then a part 2. Well, we looked at the content and it wasn't very long. It wasn't very in depth. When I looked at the part 1, it didn't make me want to read the part 2. And so really it was just a good opportunity for us to combine the two into one way better piece that was more of a full guide. And so we're going to redirect them, we're going to merge them and update them, right? So we're taking that third action and we're going to do all three of them. And then the fourth one is, are we updating and optimizing? So are we taking the best of 2020 or the best of 2021, and we're going to update and optimize and work through that. And also think of the data that we're pulling in, that if there's meta descriptions that are missing or H1s that are missing, that may just need optimization. Maybe there's just a post that has a fantastic keyword that just hasn't been treated properly. I think this is actually on another slide in here too. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but those are really simple things that can be done, that can be updated and optimized, that you can identify during this process. Oh yeah, it was right here. So we're going to update if the piece is getting recent traffic, but has some room for improvement. We're going to also do it if the content is mostly relevant and timely, but has some outdated statistics or data. It's good writing, but has missing metadata or other optimizations that you know that you can improve. So these are all good reasons to update. And honestly too, if it's outdated because of a date, this is a really good time to get rid of those dates. No more best of 2020 posts, no more best of 2022 posts. Go ahead and just get rid of those, because you're just setting yourself up for failure, because they're always going to be outdated eventually. And if somebody misses them or forgets to, they're not going to be working for you anyway. So just go ahead and just do the best of posts, but don't put a year attached to it. And definitely don't put the year in your URL. Okay, rant over. Two places we're going to rewrite. So if the content is thin, again, if we have very few words, it's poor quality, but it has a targeted keyword that you really want to go after. Or if it's still, like, again, a great focus keyword and the topic is evergreen. So if you don't know what an evergreen post is, that means that like it's something that's going to be great for you for years to come or throughout the year. It's like just always a good topic for you. And the content is not performing. So you may look at this and, you know, the system may be like, this is one that I would delete. So you'd be like, oh, okay, we should delete this one. Look, that's a 2022 post. Just for example. But you may look at that and go, oh no, I really like that. That's a good focus for us. I don't think it's a good reason to delete it yet. Let's go ahead and rewrite it. Let's try again. Let's look back at it in 6 months and see how it's performing then. Which again is why we're doing content audits at least yearly, if not more often, and tracking our ROI on every action that we're doing in marketing. Okay, we're going to keep it and not make any changes with these two things. Content's performing well. We're getting traffic. We're getting conversions. We're really happy with the piece of content. We're going to keep it and leave it alone. The piece is relevant. It's high quality. It's optimized the way it needs to be. But it's underperforming. So this is where I was talking about how it just may need a little bit more time. And so let's just leave it alone. This is also a good place where you go, hey, if it's all of these other things, I know it's doing right. Maybe we do some offsite optimizing. Maybe we push it out on socials more. Maybe we like think outside the box of just like not just letting it sit on your site, but do some other things to push it out, especially if it's a really good piece of content. Like you know it's going to perform, like it may just need a little bit of extra help. Okay, so we're going to delete it if it's 2 to 3 years old, it's irrelevant, and it's thin, it's getting no traffic, and it's poorly written and not optimized. So those are all good reasons by themselves. But if it's all of those, if you just look at one of these pieces and you're like, oh gosh, that's so bad. And I know how it feels to go, okay, I've either paid somebody to do this or I put my time and energy into it myself. It would not feel great to delete something. But the truth is, like, you get rid of some of that poorly done content and your entire site's going to get better, because the rest of the site may be more relevant and doing well. So deleting things isn't going to hurt you, even though maybe it hurts your heart or it upsets you because you put the effort in. It'll help overall your site or your client site do better. And then secondly, if the content's just the above, or excuse me, the target is the keyword is out of your scope, or the difficulty score is too hard, or the competition is major brands. So if we're going against like the Coca-Colas of the world, like we just may go ahead and be like, hey, there's no reason we need to be on page 50 of Google with this keyword. It's really just bringing down our overall authority. So let's just go ahead and swap it out for something else and get rid of it. And truth be told too, like if it's bringing in traffic, okay, I'll use an example of a friend of mine. This has not been a client, but he's a financial services company, and he was using in his writing one day an example of toilet paper. And he ended up getting a ton of traffic for some kind of like random toilet paper thing. And he thought it was hilarious. And so he like kept it up. But I was like talked to him about this, like, but you're getting a bunch of traffic for people looking for toilet paper. Like that doesn't help you with your financial services business. And I think it's still up. I think it's still something that he laughs about. But like ultimately, it's a piece of content that if it were me running the SEO and content strategy for him, I would be deleting that piece of content because it's not bringing our target audience there. It's just distracting, and it's messing up all of our metrics. So look at that. And then also too, like, have you changed something about your business? Like, if it's content journey and we're not offering content audits anymore, we're going to get rid of our content that talks about content audits, because we're not serving that audience any longer. Okay, step number 6. I know we're going over time. I could talk about this for a really long time. Step number 6, take action. So now that you've assessed, now that you've taken your notes, you've made your plans, now it's time to start taking action. So prioritize your list. Decide if you want to start with our highest traffic content first, or if you prioritize the low-hanging fruit. So for example, re-optimizing and updating content, redoing meta descriptions, like that stuff doesn't take as much time as rewriting an entire piece of content. And so go through and like make those notes, and in the blank spreadsheet I've created for you all, I actually put a prioritization column to make it easy for you next to your notes section, so that you can sit there and give it a 1, 2, 3, or 4 and score it, so that you can go through and be like, okay, no, this is a piece that I want to focus on first or not. And then what we've done is we go back and resort our entire sheet, and we put our priorities at the top, and then we go through and just start checking them off. So make your plan, take action, and start prioritizing. And then finally, just look at that overall strategy. So I talked about this at the top of at the beginning of our webinar and our time together. But your content audit isn't your strategy. You need to have an overall strategy, and the content audit needs to be a piece of the strategy, not the whole darn thing. So we need to be asking yourself these questions, like, as you're going through this process, like, how hard was it to gather your content assets and all of the data that was related to it? Investing in tools, would it make it easier? Like, are you investing in SEMrush? Would it be better to invest in one of the tools that does a content audit for you? It's more expensive, and like, would that be more worthwhile? Could you document your content creation process better, like in your content calendar? And if you don't have a content calendar, you need to have a content calendar. Talk to Emily about that. She makes gorgeous calendars. And then, are you keeping up with tracking and measuring your content performance? Like, well, and are you doing it regularly? I think that's something that people forget about, because generally people don't find value in content. Obviously I do. And so tracking and measuring that performance is just incredibly smart to do. Like, it takes effort to put that out there, and it can be so valuable to a business because people are constantly asking questions. And if you're the one providing the answers, like, there is value there. And so tracking and measuring that can be incredibly valuable, not just to yourself, but to your clients if you're providing that service. And so how could you track and measure that better? And then are there any gaps? Like you have now just taken, I don't know, 18 hours, 24 hours, however much combined time it takes to perform this audit. And like looked at every single piece of content on your site. Like, what gaps did you see? Did you look at something and go, oh gosh, we really should have been talking about XYZ? I do this every single time I look at our content. I think it through this. Like, there's always something more that I think we should be talking about, or an idea that pops into my head. So what are those gaps, and how can you be tweaking your strategy? Because like these audits are deeply connected to having this overall strategy. And if you're asking those questions while you're going through this process, even if you're asking those questions now that you've listened to me go through this like pretend process, like how can you connect that now to your overall strategy and be more successful in your marketing next year? So all of this data is coming from the Content Marketing Institute. This is something that they did in or released in 2022, so it's incredibly recent. But they say 62% of the most successful content marketers have a content strategy. Like, I just wanted to be like, well, yeah, obviously, because if we have a plan and we execute on that plan, like it's gonna work, right? And then 83% of the most successful marketers use content creation and calendaring in their content marketing. Again, like I think it's incredibly important to do that. So not only to have a strategy, but to create the calendar and know what's happening for the next 30, 60, 90 days or more. We do that internally at Content Journey. Emily presented us at a leadership meeting several months ago with our like 12-month strategy, like with themes and everything that was happening. And as much effort and time it took to create that, it was so nice just knowing, okay, this is what we're going to be focusing on, and the team can rally around that to execute. And then just, because we're here and I have a content marketing agency, 57% of the most successful marketers outsource their content marketing. So if you're interested in that, I would be happy to help you with that outsourcing of that. Okay. So strategy is often what determines the difference between winning and losing. And like, we can say this in anything, right? Like we can say it in playing softball or poker or driving. I mean, we have to have a strategy, and it often is really what determines if we're successful or not. And so thinking through this content audit, I think, is a huge opportunity to be successful in your overall winning strategy. So that's all I have for today. I would love to work together and talk to you more. We're going to put this up on YouTube, and I'm going to stick around for a little bit and answer some questions. But like I said, we'll send out the recording. We'll put this up on YouTube. We'll have a winner from somebody who registered today that will get us to go through and perform their content audit for them. So I think that will be a rather worthy endeavor. And let's see what we have today. Thanks, Andrea. I'm so glad you were here. Okay, you can use the chat or you can use the Q&A panel if you have any questions. And I will stick around a little bit longer. Oh, okay. So if I could take one thing you talked about, could do this week and make an impact, what would it be? Oh, that's a really good question. Only one thing. I know, like, there's so many pieces of analyzing the content that I think is really important, of bringing it together. But if I could do one thing, okay, one thing. Okay, got you. I would pull the data in that shows my meta descriptions and my H1s for the site, and make sure that all of those are filled out. So excellent question. That's the first thing that I would do. If I could just do one thing and I wasn't going to do the full audit, I would do that. I would do all my meta descriptions. I'd make sure that everything has an H1. There is actually an SEO company that I've had a couple of clients move over from, and they had no H1s on their entire website. And I was like, you're an SEO company. Why do you not have H1s? So I would do that. Okay, so yes, if you're on WordPress, okay, good question. So if you're on WordPress, there are several SEO plugins that are really, really helpful. And so Yoast is obviously a really popular one, probably the most popular these days. And so that's a good one to do. Their free version is fantastic. They're running a Black Friday sale right now on their Pro, which I think really has features that make it worthwhile. And so, I mean, it's like $90 a year or something like that. And so it's like 30% off. And then I think they do renewal discounts too. And so I think I would totally utilize that plugin. It creates your sitemap for you if you don't have some of the basic SEO things. And so there are a lot of pieces that a plugin on a WordPress site will do. And ultimately, like, I don't know, I think I don't know as much about, Shopify or Squarespace or some of the other CMSs, but they do a lot of things in-house too that help you. But if you don't know what those are, go ahead and research them and make sure that you're getting some of that done. Oh yeah, thank you, Corey Miller, for putting that in. Yeah, see, I knew I saw that email. I actually sent it to someone today. Okay, let's see. Another question. How often should I do a content audit? I would say like at least every year I would do a content audit, and you can keep your spreadsheet and just update your spreadsheet so that you can actually just like keep reevaluating your content as you're moving through it every year. If you have a highly trafficked site where your content is really bringing in a lot of conversions, or maybe it's just making your leads so warm when they're calling or contacting you, and so your content is really helping your sales process a ton, then maybe every 6 months might be worthwhile, or just publishing a lot. But honestly, for the most part, I think every 12 months is a good cadence for a content audit. And but again, I think that updating and optimizing, deleting, and taking actions with like already existing content is such a good use of time and money, because it's just going to serve you so well. And the search engines are really going to respond to your use of not just new content, but updating the old. Like you're going to see your traffic skyrocket once you start doing this regularly. And my guess is, once you start doing it yearly, maybe you're going to be motivated to do it more often. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? I don't want to keep everybody too long. Thank you all so much for coming today. Here, I'll stop my share. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate those who came to listen to me ramble on about data and content audits. And we will email out our winner, today sometime, or probably maybe tomorrow. We'll have to talk to Emily and see when we can get that together, and see who the winner is of our content audit. But thank you so very much for joining me. And we do have another webinar coming up on December 8th. Megan, the amazing Megan SEO specialist that we have, and I will be talking about SEO. And so that'll be another one that you will not want to miss. So until next time, thank you.